I never imagined my greatest achievement would lead to my darkest betrayal. After selling my tech company for $48 million, I invited my daughter Amanda and her husband Derek to celebrate at Luminaire, the most exclusive restaurant in Boston. During a brief phone call outside, a young waiter approached me looking troubled. "Sir, I hate to say this, but I just witnessed your daughter pour something into your drink when her husband wasn't looking." Stunned, I returned to our table, casually switched our glasses and waited. 10 minutes later, everything changed forever. The path to this moment had been long and arduous. For 40 years I had poured my heart and soul into building Sentinel Shield, my cybersecurity company. What started in my garage with nothing but an old computer and a dream had grown into an industry leader with 300 employees across the country. When Megatech approached me with their buyout offer 6 months ago, I initially laughed it off. But after that heart attack scare last winter where I spent 3 days in the hospital, I started reconsidering my priorities. At 68, perhaps it was time to enjoy the fruits of my labor. The final paperwork had been signed this morning. $48 million. The number still felt unreal, like something happening to someone else. After my wife Sarah passed from cancer 12 years ago, Amanda became my only family. She had been just 22 then, finishing her bachelor's degree in business administration. I'd always hoped she would join the company, but she had other interests, marrying Derek 5 years later and moving into marketing for a retail chain. Luminaire wasn't just expensive, it was exclusive. Reservations required months of advance planning or the right connections. The 45-story building overlooked the harbor, with the restaurant occupying the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the Boston skyline glittering against the twilight. The $500 per person minimum meant most people saved it for once-in-a-lifetime occasions. Tonight was certainly that. "Dad, this is incredible," Amanda said as the host led us to our table. At 34, she looked so much like her mother, the same hazel eyes and dark brown hair worn just past her shoulders. "You've really outdone yourself this time." Derek, tall and classically handsome in his tailored suit, nodded in agreement. "Seriously, Patrick, this is something else." He'd always called me by my first name, which I'd initially found odd, but had grown accustomed to over their 7 years of marriage. As we settled into our seats, I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. From struggling to pay Amanda's college tuition to now sitting in the most exclusive restaurant in the city life had come full circle. "I thought it was appropriate," I said, scanning the leather-bound menu. "After all, how often does someone sell their life's work?" The sommelier approached, and I ordered their most expensive champagne. Why not? Tonight was about celebration, about marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. "To new beginnings," I said, raising my glass once it arrived. "And to smart financial planning," Amanda added, a bit too quickly. "Have you thought about what you'll do with the money, Dad?" I noticed Derek shift slightly in his seat, his eyes flickering to Amanda before returning to me. "I'm sure you have some ideas already," he said, reaching for his water glass. "A man like you always has a plan." I described my initial thoughts: some charitable donations, perhaps a vacation home on the coast, investments to ensure financial security. Throughout my explanation, I noticed Amanda seemed unusually interested in the specifics. Where exactly would the money be held? Had I considered trusts or other vehicles? How soon would the full amount be accessible? Derek kept checking his phone throughout our appetizers, sliding it partially under the table as though I wouldn't notice. He seemed distracted yet somehow watchful, contributing to the conversation in bursts before falling silent again. Something felt off about his demeanor, but I attributed it to the magnitude of the occasion. As our main courses arrived, my phone rang. Glancing at the screen, I saw it was James, my lawyer. "Sorry, I should take this. It's about the final transfer." I excused myself and walked toward the elevators, seeking a quieter spot. "James, everything okay?" "All good, Patrick. The wire transfer is complete. The funds are now in your account. Congratulations, you're officially $48 million richer." We chatted briefly about the next steps, tax considerations, and a meeting scheduled for next week. As I ended the call, a sense of relief and accomplishment washed over me. 4 decades of stress, sleepless nights, and sacrifice had paid off. I was free. As I turned to head back to our table, a young waiter approached. He appeared to be in his mid-20s, with sandy blonde hair and a nervous expression that immediately put me on alert. "Excuse me, sir," he said, his voice low. "My name is Jack. I've worked here for 5 years, and I've never interfered with guests before, but—" He glanced around, making sure no one could overhear. "I just saw something concerning at your table." My stomach tightened. "What is it?" "When you left to take your call, I was serving the table next to yours. I clearly saw your daughter pour something from a small vial into your wine glass when her husband was looking at his phone." His eyes held mine, steady and concerned. She quickly put the vial back in her purse when he looked up. For a moment, I couldn't process his words. "Amanda? My daughter?" It had to be a mistake. "Are you absolutely certain?" I asked, studying his face for any sign of deception. "Yes, sir. I wouldn't say anything if I wasn't sure." The way she looked around first to make sure no one was watching, "I just felt you should know." My mind raced through possible explanations. Could it be some kind of vitamin or supplement she thought I should take? But why not just give it to me directly? Why the secretiveness? "Thank you," I said finally. "I appreciate you telling me." As I walked back to our table, a storm of emotions battled within me. Trust my only daughter, the person I loved most in this world, or trust this stranger who had no apparent reason to lie? The waiter seemed sincere, but could he have misinterpreted what he saw? Amanda smiled as I approached. "Everything okay with James?" "Perfect," I replied, studying her expression carefully. Was that a flicker of something in her eyes? Anxiety? Anticipation? The transfer is complete. Derek raised his glass. "To your success, Patrick." Well deserved. As we clinked glasses, I made my decision. With a casual motion that I hoped appeared natural, I switched my glass with Amanda's during the toast. If the waiter was wrong, no harm done. If he was right, I took a sip from what had been her glass, watching as confusion briefly crossed Amanda's face before she composed herself and lifted my original glass to her lips, then paused, setting it down without drinking. "Is something wrong with the champagne?" I asked innocently. "No," she said quickly. "I just remembered I'm driving later. Maybe I should slow down." As I looked more closely at my original glass, now in front of Amanda, I noticed a faint residue along the bottom edge, partially dissolved but still visible if you knew to look for it. My heart sank. As our dinner continued, I maintained a facade of normalcy while carefully observing Amanda and Derek. The conversation turned to my retirement plans, with Amanda suggesting I consider purchasing a vacation property where we could all stay. "Maybe something on Cape Cod," she said, her tone casual but her eyes watchful. "A place big enough for family gatherings." Derek, who had shown little interest in my financial affairs previously, suddenly had numerous questions about my investment approach. "Who's handling your portfolio now that you've got real money to manage?" he asked. "I've heard great things about Westlake Financial. My buddy Todd works with them." "I'm staying with Gary," I replied, referring to my financial advisor of 15 years. "He's been with me through the lean times. Seems right he should be there for the good times too. But does he have experience managing this level of wealth?" Derek pressed. "You might want someone more specialized." I noticed Amanda checking the time repeatedly, her eyes darting to my glass, the one she thought contained whatever she had added. A chill ran through me as I realized she was waiting for something to happen. About 20 minutes into our main course, I began to feel strange. The room seemed to tilt slightly, and forming complete thoughts became increasingly difficult. My words felt thick in my mouth. With horrifying clarity, I understood that my original glass, the one Amanda now had in front of her, had already been tampered with earlier. She had been planning a second dose. The realization struck me like a physical blow. My own daughter had drugged me once and attempted to do it again. But why? "Dad, are you feeling okay?" Amanda asked, her voice laced with what might have sounded like concern to anyone else. To my now suspicious ears, it seemed performative. "You look a little pale." "Just a bit dizzy," I admitted, allowing some of my genuine disorientation to show. How much had I ingested from that first glass before the waiter's warning? I needed to stay alert enough to understand what was happening. Derek and Amanda exchanged glances. "Maybe we should get you home to rest," Amanda suggested, reaching for her purse. "I can drive your car." Derek suddenly became attentive, solicitous. "You've had a big day, Patrick. The excitement, the champagne, probably not much food earlier. Let us take care of you." His words, "let us take care of you," sent another chill through me. The way he said it felt ominous rather than comforting. "We're family," Amanda added. "Family takes care of each other." Derek nodded. "Speaking of taking care, there's that document for the tax thing we mentioned. Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow when you're feeling better, but it would be good to get it signed soon. The accountant said it needs to be done this week." "What tax document?" We hadn't discussed any paperwork over dinner. The room spun slightly as I tried to focus my thoughts through the growing fog. "Maybe we should call an ambulance," I suggested, watching their reactions carefully. "No," Amanda said, too forcefully. She immediately softened her tone. "I mean, that's not necessary. You're just tired. We can take you home, and you'll feel better after some rest." Derek nodded vigorously. "Hospitals are for emergencies. This isn't an emergency, right? Just exhaustion." Their panic at the mention of medical professionals confirmed my worst fears. Whatever they had given me, they didn't want detected in my system. I pretended to drop my napkin and used the opportunity to text Jack under the table. "Call police. Being drugged. Help." I didn't know if he would see it in time, but it was worth trying. Seconds later, I saw Jack walk by our table, making brief eye contact with me as he passed. His small nod told me he'd received my message and understood. As I sat there, fighting to maintain awareness while pretending to be more affected than I was, the full weight of betrayal pressed down on me. My daughter, my only child, Sarah's legacy had drugged me. My mind couldn't fully grasp the why, but the what was undeniable. I'd spent my life building security for her, and now she was using it against me somehow. The pain of this understanding threatened to overwhelm me, but survival instinct kept me focused. Whatever their plan, I needed to stay alert enough to counter it. "Let's get you home, Dad," Amanda said, her voice sweet with artificial concern. She and Derek helped me from my chair, each taking an arm as we walked toward the elevator. I deliberately stumbled, partly to buy time, and partly to maintain the illusion that the drug was taking stronger hold. As we passed through the restaurant, I made sure to catch the eye of the maitre d', letting my body sag noticeably. I spotted security cameras in the corners of the ceiling, and silently thanked whatever instinct had made me switch those glasses. The elevator ride down was tense, with Derek checking his watch repeatedly. Outside, the valet brought my Mercedes around, and Derek helped me into the back seat while Amanda took the driver's seat. "I'll follow in our car," Derek said to Amanda. "Remember, straight to the location we discussed." As Amanda pulled away from the restaurant, I noticed we weren't heading toward my home in Brookline. Instead, she took the highway northbound, away from Boston entirely. Through half-closed eyes, I watched as familiar surroundings gave way to darker, more remote landscapes. My mind drifted to Amanda's childhood, teaching her to ride a bike in our driveway, her determined little face as she kept getting back up after each fall. Her high school graduation, where she'd hugged me fiercely and whispered, "Thanks for believing in me, Dad." The day I'd helped her and Derek with the down payment on their house, so proud to be able to give them a start in life. Had all that connection, that love, meant nothing? Or was Derek the driving force behind whatever was happening now? I'd never fully warmed to him, finding something calculated in his charm, but I'd kept those reservations to myself for Amanda's sake. 3 weeks ago, Amanda had called with unusually specific questions about my will and estate planning. At the time, I'd thought she was just being practical, knowing the business sale was approaching completion. Now, that conversation took on a sinister new dimension. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Carefully, I slipped it out just enough to see a text from Jack. Police notified. GPS tracking your phone. Stay safe. Meanwhile, Amanda had connected her phone to the car's Bluetooth system and called Derek, who answered on speakerphone. "We're about 20 minutes out," she said. "How's the traffic on your end?" "Light. I'll be there before you." I called ahead. "They've got everything ready." A third voice joined the call. "Is he conscious? Can he sign?" "He's in and out," Amanda replied, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. I kept my eyes unfocused, my head lolling against the window. "The papers need to be signed tonight," the voice continued. "The offshore transfers have to start within 48 hours to avoid detection." "It'll happen," Derek said firmly. "We've got video recording equipment to document his consent. Worst case, we use the power of attorney." "That's risky without medical documentation," the voice cautioned. "We're past the point of being cautious," Derek snapped. "I need those transfers completed." "You're moving too fast," Amanda said, tension evident in her voice. "We agreed to ease into this gradually." "That was before the loan sharks started sending people to my office," Derek hissed. "Do you understand what these people do to make examples? We don't have the luxury of time." Loan sharks? What had Derek gotten himself into? And more importantly, how were they planning to use my money to solve his problems? As we continued north, I recognized the route to the White Mountains in New Hampshire. Derek's family owned a cabin near Conway, isolated, rarely visited by others. I'd been there once for a weekend fishing trip 3 summers ago. The pieces were falling into place. Get me a loan, drugged, and have me sign documents transferring my newly acquired fortune. But would they stop at theft? The mention of offshore transfers suggested they planned to disappear afterward. And what would happen to me once I'd served my purpose? The third voice on the call suddenly asked, "Did you dispose of the substance afterward? No evidence?" "Of course," Amanda replied. "I'm not stupid." "Good. With his history of heart problems, no one will question a cardiac event in a 68-year-old man who just experienced a major life change." My blood ran cold. They weren't just planning to steal my money. They were discussing my death as a business transaction. As the conversation continued, I used the opportunity to activate my phone's emergency recording feature and sent my location to Jack with the text, "NH Mountains, Derek's cabin, hearing murder plans." How had it come to this? My daughter, whom I'd read bedtime stories to every night, who I'd comforted through her first heartbreak, who had held my hand at her mother's funeral, now coldly discussing my demise with her husband and an unknown accomplice. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound, but beneath the pain, a steely resolve was forming. I had built a business from nothing, weathered economic downturns, corporate espionage, and countless setbacks. I hadn't survived 40 years in business by being easily defeated. As Amanda turned onto the unmarked dirt road leading to the cabin, I began mentally preparing for whatever came next. The cabin appeared through the trees, a larger structure than most would imagine when hearing the word cabin. The 2-story building sat on 5 acres of wooded land, with the nearest neighbor over a mile away. A single light glowed from the kitchen window, and another car, not Derek's, was already parked in the gravel driveway. "We're here, Dad," Amanda said, killing the engine. "Derek will help you inside, and you can rest." I mumbled something unintelligible, continuing my act. Minutes later, Derek's SUV pulled up behind us. He hurried to open my door, helping me out with exaggerated care. "Let's get you comfortable, Patrick," he said loudly, then whispered to Amanda, "How is he?" "Still out of it," she replied. "Barely knows where he is." They half carried me into the cabin, where the warm air smelled of pine and coffee. As they guided me to a leather couch in the living room, I caught sight of a third person in the kitchen, a balding man in his 50s, arranging papers on the dining table. With a jolt of recognition that I carefully kept from showing on my face, I realized it was Gary Wilson, my financial advisor of 15 years. The betrayal deepened. Not just family, but a trusted professional colleague as well. "Is he coherent?" Gary asked, approaching to study my face. Enough for what we need, Derek replied. He can hold a pen and respond to basic questions. Good. Gary returned to the table. I've prepared everything. Power of attorney, wire transfer authorizations, the revised will. Once these are signed, I can begin moving the funds tomorrow morning. Derek helped me to a chair at the table, while Amanda brought me a glass of water. I pretended to drink clumsily, spilling some down my chin. The more helpless they thought I was, the more they might reveal. Just a few signatures and our problems are over, Derek murmured to Amanda, squeezing her shoulder. Gary arranged the documents in front of me, a video camera already set up on a tripod to record the signing. We'll make this quick and painless, he said, not realizing the irony of his words. As I feigned confusion over where to sign, Derek grew impatient. Why isn't he more compliant? He demanded of Amanda. You said he'd be practically comatose by now. I used what you gave me, she hissed back. Maybe your dealer shorted you. Or maybe you didn't use enough because you're getting cold feet, Derek snapped. We've discussed this for months. Your father has always been too careful with his money. Now that he's finally sold the company, this is our one chance. I know, but what? You think he was ever going to help us? After I asked for that loan last year for my investment opportunity, and he lectured me about due diligence and proper business planning, he's just going to sit on that $48 million, doling out small allowances until he dies of old age 30 years from now. Amanda's voice shook slightly. He's still my father. And what has he done for you lately? Paid for a wedding, helped with the house down payment, basic parental duties. Meanwhile, he built that company with your mother by his side. Half that money should rightfully be yours anyway, as Sarah's daughter. I listened, my heart breaking all over again. Is that how Amanda saw me? As withholding? As merely fulfilling basic parental duties? I'd always thought I was respecting her independence, not controlling her with money. Had I somehow failed her so completely? Gary interrupted their argument. Keep your voices down. We need to focus. According to the dosage, we have a limited window before he starts regaining awareness. That's if Amanda administered it correctly, Derek muttered. I did everything exactly as planned, Amanda insisted. It's not my fault he's more resistant than expected. Gary turned to Derek. Where's my payment? $200,000 now. Another $300 when the transfers are complete. You'll get it, Derek assured him. Once I have access to the accounts. No. We agreed to payment up front. I'm not moving forward until I see the money. Derek's expression darkened. That wasn't our arrangement. It is now, Gary said firmly. I'm taking all the professional risk here. If this gets traced back to me, my career is finished. You think I'm not taking risks? Derek's voice rose. Do you know what happens if I don't pay back Vince Corelli by the end of the month? $2 million, plus interest. Amanda gasped. $2 million? You told me it was half that. Does it matter? Once we have access to Patrick's accounts, it matters because you lied to me. Amanda's voice cracked. Just like you lied about those investment opportunities that were really covering your gambling debts. I watched as the unity among my betrayers began to fracture. Gary stood straighter, alarm crossing his face. Gambling debts? To Vince Corelli? He looked at Derek with new wariness. You're involved with the Corelli family? That wasn't part of what I agreed to. Derek laughed bitterly. What did you think this was, Gary? A friendly little embezzlement among colleagues. I need this money to stay alive. I'm out, Gary said abruptly, reaching for his briefcase. This is too dangerous. Find another financial advisor to ruin their life. Nobody's going anywhere, Derek said, his voice suddenly cold as he moved to block Gary's path. While they argued, I continued my act of confusion, purposely signing my name as Patrick instead of Patrick on the first document pushed in front of me. I needed to stall for time while continuously sending my location to Jack and the police. He's messing up the signatures, Gary noticed with frustration. They won't hold up to scrutiny. Make him do it again, Derek demanded. I'm trying. Gary thrust the paper back at me. Patrick, this is important. Sign your name correctly. I blinked owlishly at him. Gary? What are you doing here? Is this about my retirement planning? The three exchanged worried glances. My apparent confusion was unsettling them. Yes, Patrick, Gary said slowly. These are your retirement documents. We need your signature. I squinted at the paper. This doesn't look like my normal paperwork. And why are we at Derek's cabin? Is this a surprise party? He's becoming more aware, Gary muttered to Derek. We need to move faster. I decided to push harder. Was that waiter at the restaurant part of your security team, Derek? The one who was watching our table? He seemed very interested in our drinks. Derek froze. What waiter? The young one. Sandy hair. He was watching us. I let my gaze drift around the room, as if still confused, but I saw the panic my words had triggered. What is he talking about? Gary demanded. Nothing. He's hallucinating, Derek insisted, but doubt had crept into his voice. Am I? I turned to Amanda. The waiter saw you put something in my drink, honey. He told me when I took that phone call. That's why I switched our glasses when I came back to the table. The color drained from Amanda's face. You switched the glasses? But that means I drank from your glass, and you had mine, I confirmed, allowing my speech to become slightly clearer. The restaurant has security cameras everywhere, by the way. Very high definition. They capture everything. Gary's eyes widened. You set me up? He accused Derek and Amanda. You said this was foolproof. He's bluffing, Derek insisted. But sweat had broken out on his forehead. There's no way he could have known. I pressed my advantage. Gary, did you know Derek is planning to cut you out once the transfers are complete? I overheard him telling Amanda on the drive up that you're the perfect scapegoat, since all the transactions will be under your credentials. That's not true, Derek protested, but his denial lacked conviction. Gary looked between them, suspicion growing. Is that why you insisted I use my regular login credentials instead of creating a new profile? So everything would be traceable to me? Of course not, Derek said too quickly. Patrick is just trying to turn us against each other. And Amanda, I continued, my voice growing steadily stronger, did Derek tell you about Marissa from his office? The one he's been meeting at the Harborview Hotel every other Thursday? The credit card statements are in the glove compartment of his car. Shut up, Derek shouted, advancing toward me. Amanda stepped between us. Is that true? Of course not. He's lying, making things up to distract us. But doubt had taken root, exactly as I'd intended. The alliance between my captors was crumbling precisely when they needed to present a united front. I continued my strategy, pretending cooperation, while deliberately making mistakes on each document. My signature varied wildly from page to page, and I accidentally spilled water on one of the critical forms. Each delay allowed more time for help to arrive. Patrick, please focus, Gary urged, his professional demeanor cracking. Just sign your full legal name on this line. I squinted at him. Remind me again why we're doing this at night? In a cabin? Is this some kind of surprise retirement thing? Gary's frustration mounted. For the 5th time, these are urgent financial documents that need your signature. But my lawyer James handles all my legal paperwork, I said innocently. Shouldn't he be here? James is unavailable, Gary said carefully. That's strange. I just spoke to him at dinner. I let my gaze wander to the window. By the way, did you know the restaurant has a security protocol where they record the identity of everyone at each table? And they store footage for 90 days. Derek's face tightened. What restaurant? What are you talking about? Luminaire, where we had dinner, where Amanda put something in my drink. I spoke slowly, as if explaining to a child. The waiter who told me works for a private security firm that handles their surveillance. They're very thorough. I was embellishing wildly, but my confident delivery had the desired effect. Gary began gathering papers with shaking hands. This is too risky, he muttered. There's too much evidence. There's no evidence because we haven't done anything yet, Derek insisted, grabbing Gary's arm. The plan still works. The plan is compromised. Gary shot back. He knows too much. I turned to Amanda, who had grown increasingly quiet. Remember when your mother was sick and we would sit on the porch swing every evening? You were 21, home from college to help during her last months. You asked me how I could stay strong, and I told you I found strength in making sure you would be okay after she was gone. Tears welled in Amanda's eyes. Dad, please, is this what she would have wanted for you? For us? I asked softly. She made me promise to help you become the best version of yourself. Did I fail that badly? Amanda turned away, wiping her eyes. You don't understand. Derek and I are in trouble. We need help. So you decided to drug me and take everything? I let the hurt show in my voice. You couldn't just ask for help. Would you have given it? She challenged, though her voice lacked conviction. $2 million? No questions asked? I don't know, I answered honestly. But I deserved the chance to make that choice, not to have it forced from me while I was unconscious. Derek interrupted our moment. Enough with the family therapy session. The longer we sit here talking, the more risk we take. He turned to Gary. Get him to finish signing, or we move to Plan B. What's Plan B? Amanda asked, alarm in her voice. Derek didn't answer, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Gary looked increasingly uncomfortable, edging toward the door. I need air, he mumbled. This is getting out of control. Nobody leaves until we finish, Derek said, his voice dangerous. I decided it was time to push harder. Derek, do the loan sharks know you're up here? I imagine they have ways of tracking people who owe them money. His head snapped toward me. What? Just wondering if they might show up looking for their $2 million. Might be awkward trying to explain this situation to them. How are you so lucid? Derek demanded, advancing on me. You should barely be conscious. I sat up straighter, my speech now perfectly clear. I've been building a tolerance to certain substances ever since my doctor prescribed sleep medication last year. Had some unpleasant side effects, so I researched extensively. Fascinating subject, pharmacokinetics. This was a complete fabrication, but Derek had no way of knowing that. The truth that I'd switched glasses before consuming much of the drugged drink would remain my secret advantage. You're lying, Derek said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. Am I? Then why am I getting clearer instead of less coherent? The drug is metabolizing faster than you expected. I stood up slowly, steady on my feet. I've spent 40 years building a business by being careful, observant, and 3 steps ahead of my competition. Did you really think I'd be this easy to fool? Gary was now openly trying to leave, stuffing papers into his briefcase. This is over. I'm out. No one is going anywhere, Derek repeated, more desperately this time. Actually, I said calmly, the State Police Tactical Unit should be arriving any minute now. They've been tracking my phone's location for the past hour. As if on cue, the sound of vehicles on the gravel driveway reached us through the windows. Multiple sets of headlights swept across the cabin walls. Derek's face contorted with panic. You're bluffing. Gary made a break for the back door. Derek lunged after him, then froze, seeming to recalibrate his priorities. He ran to the desk drawer instead, yanking it open and pulling out a handgun. Amanda screamed. Derek, what are you doing? Solving our problems once and for all, he said, his voice eerily calm as he pointed the weapon at me. If Patrick dies while signing his new will, everything still goes to you as his only heir. We just need to get rid of Gary and any evidence of coercion. No. Amanda moved to stand between us. This is insane. I never agreed to this. Move, Amanda, Derek ordered, his hand shaking slightly. This is the only way out now. I kept my voice steady. Think about what you're doing, Derek. Murder carries a different sentence than attempted fraud. Shut up, he shouted. I'm not going to prison, and I'm not going to be made an example of by Vince Corelli. The sound of car doors slamming outside added urgency to the standoff. Derek's attention wavered for just a moment, and I seized the opportunity. Drawing on training from the senior self-defense class I'd been taking for the past 5 years, another detail my son-in-law had never bothered to learn about me, I moved with surprising agility for a man my age. In one fluid motion, I knocked the gun upward with my left forearm, while stepping inside Derek's guard. Using his own momentum against him, I twisted his wrist sharply, forcing him to release the weapon as pain shot up his arm. The gun clattered to the floor, and I kicked it away. Derek stared at me in shock. "How did you—" "Tuesday nights at the community center," I said, keeping him in a joint lock that had him half bent at the waist. "My instructor is a retired Marine. Says I'm his best senior student." Gary had frozen by the back door, watching the confrontation unfold. Seeing his chance, he grabbed his briefcase and made another attempt to flee. Amanda, seeming to finally choose a side, blocked his path. "You helped plan this," she said, her voice shaking. "You're not going anywhere." The front door burst open, and state police officers flooded in, weapons drawn. "Police! Everyone on the ground now!" Derek struggled against my hold, trying to break free in desperation. I maintained pressure on his wrist and shoulder, forcing him to his knees just as the officers reached us. "This man," I told the lead officer, indicating Derek, "has a gambling debt to Vince Corelli, and was planning to steal my money to pay it off. These two were helping him." I nodded toward Gary and Amanda. "Dad, please," Amanda begged, as an officer secured her hands behind her back. Despite everything, my heart broke for her. Even now, after all she'd done, she was still my daughter, still Sarah's daughter. "I'll make sure they know you changed your mind at the end," I said softly as they led her away. The state police station buzzed with activity as officers processed Derek, Gary, and Amanda. I sat in an interview room, a cup of cooling coffee in front of me, giving my statement to Detective Lisa Morales, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s. "So you're saying your financial advisor, your daughter, and your son-in-law conspired to drug you and force you to sign over your assets?" she asked, making notes on her tablet. "Yes," I confirmed. "Gary Wilson has been my financial advisor for 15 years. Apparently, Derek approached him about the scheme months ago, after learning I was selling my company. And the waiter at the restaurant, Jack," I supplied. "Jack Remington. He saw Amanda put something in my drink and warned me. Without him, I might not be here now." Detective Morales nodded. "We'll need his statement as well. The restaurant security footage has already been secured. It clearly shows your daughter adding something to your glass." I winced at the confirmation, though I'd already known it was true. What happens now? "We've separated the suspects for questioning. Based on initial conversations, it appears Mr. Evans is attempting to paint your daughter as an unwitting participant." That sounded like Derek looking for someone else to blame. "And Gary? Mr. Wilson is already negotiating through his attorney. He's offering information in exchange for consideration during charging." Through the interview room window, I could see Amanda in another room across the hall, her face in her hands. She looked small and broken. "Can I speak with my daughter?" I asked. Detective Morales hesitated. "That's not standard procedure in cases like this." "Please," I said quietly. "Just for a moment." After consulting with her superior, Detective Morales arranged a brief, supervised meeting. Amanda could barely look at me when they brought her in. "Dad, I'm so sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I never wanted it to go this far. Derek said we just needed money to get out of debt, that you'd never miss it from such a large amount. Then the plan kept changing, becoming more extreme." "Why didn't you come to me?" I asked. The question that had been haunting me. "I would have helped you. Derek said you'd judge him, demand control over our finances in return for help." She wiped her eyes. "And maybe I was ashamed. I didn't want you to know how bad things had gotten, how badly I'd chosen." I reached across the table, taking her hands in mine. "Amanda, you're my daughter, my only family. Nothing is more important than that. I tried to back out tonight," she said, her voice breaking. "When I saw how far Derek was willing to go, I never thought he'd threaten your life." "I know," I said gently. "I saw you choose to protect me at the end." The officers indicated our time was up. As they prepared to lead Amanda back to her holding cell, she looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Can you ever forgive me?" she asked in a small voice. I thought of Sarah, of the promises we'd made to each other about caring for our daughter. Forgiveness will take time, I said honestly, but I'll be here while you work to earn it back. Over the next 6 months, the legal process unfolded with painful thoroughness. Derek, facing the most serious charges, tried every tactic to shift blame onto others. During his arraignment, he claimed Amanda had masterminded the entire plan, an allegation that collapsed when Gary Wilson produced text messages and recorded conversations proving Derek's leading role. In exchange for his cooperation, Gary received a reduced sentence of 10 years for conspiracy, fraud, and professional malfeasance. His detailed testimony revealed how Derek had initially approached him with a hypothetical scenario about moving assets offshore, gradually pulling him deeper into the actual plot. Derek, with his back against the wall and facing overwhelming evidence, eventually accepted a plea deal for 15 years in prison for attempted kidnapping, conspiracy to commit fraud, assault with a deadly weapon, and other charges. The district attorney had pushed for a longer sentence, but I chose not to advocate for maximum penalties, thinking of Amanda. Amanda's case was more complicated. While clearly involved in the planning and execution, her actions during the confrontation and her immediate cooperation with authorities worked in her favor. Her attorney successfully argued that she had been unduly influenced by Derek, pointing to their financial records, showing his escalating gambling debts and the psychological control he'd exerted over her during their marriage. In the end, she accepted responsibility by pleading guilty to reduced charges, receiving 5 years of probation and 2,000 hours of community service rather than prison time. The judge made it clear that this leniency was unusual, and largely due to my statement to the court about her change of heart during the critical moments at the cabin. Throughout this difficult period, I found unexpected support from Jack Remington, the waiter whose intervention had quite literally saved my life. After learning his story that he was working at the restaurant to support his mother and younger siblings while taking night classes toward a business degree, I felt compelled to help. Life had given me a second chance. Perhaps this was an opportunity to pay it forward. 1 year after that fateful night at Luminaire, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. The betrayal that nearly cost me everything had ultimately led to profound changes and unexpected new beginnings. In the immediate aftermath of the incident, I underwent a complete restructuring of my finances with a new team of advisors personally vetted by James, my attorney. I established multiple trusts with ironclad protections, directing significant portions of my wealth toward causes that mattered to me. The Patrick Donovan Foundation for Entrepreneurial Innovation now provided seed funding and mentorship to promising startups, with a special focus on those from disadvantaged backgrounds. The foundation became my primary focus, giving me purpose beyond the sudden emptiness of retirement. 3 days a week, I worked from a modest office in downtown Boston, reviewing business plans and meeting with young entrepreneurs whose determination reminded me of my own early days. Amanda's journey was more challenging. After Derek's sentencing, she filed for divorce and moved into a small apartment on the other side of the city. The terms of her probation required therapy and financial management courses, both of which she embraced with genuine commitment. At her request, I had arranged a position for her at the foundation not as an executive or manager, but as an entry-level assistant, where she could prove herself through hard work rather than family connection. Our relationship remained fragile, healing in small increments. We met weekly for coffee, conversations initially stilted and uncomfortable but gradually becoming more natural. She never made excuses for her actions, accepting responsibility while working to demonstrate through consistent behavior that she had changed. The counselor says I spent years letting Derek make decisions because it was easier than standing on my own, she told me during one of our meetings. I convinced myself I was being supportive, but really, I was avoiding responsibility. We all have blind spots, I said. Even me. You? Amanda looked surprised. I thought giving you independence meant not interfering, not asking too many questions about your marriage or finances. Maybe if I'd been more present, noticed the warning signs earlier. Dad, no. She reached for my hand. What I did was my choice. You can't take responsibility for that. It was a small moment of growth for both of us. Jack Remington's story had a happier trajectory. After learning about his family situation and academic goals, I established a full scholarship in his name at Boston University's School of Business. He initially refused, uncomfortable with accepting such generosity from a virtual stranger. "I can't take your money, Mr. Donovan," he said when I proposed the idea. "I was just doing what anyone should do." "But that's exactly the point, Jack. Not everyone would have done what you did. Most people would have looked the other way, not wanting to get involved. You risked your job to help someone you'd never met." Eventually, he accepted on the condition that he could work part-time at the foundation while completing his degree. His intelligence and work ethic quickly made him invaluable, and I found myself mentoring him as I might have done with a son. Through Jack, I met his family, his mother Ellen, a nurse working double shifts to support 3 children, his younger brother Michael, a talented high school athlete, and his sister Sophia, a shy 12-year-old with an aptitude for mathematics. They gradually became part of my life, filling some of the emptiness left by the fracturing of my own family. As Thanksgiving approached, I decided to host a small gathering at my home. Nothing extravagant, just good food and meaningful company. Jack and his family would be there, along with Amanda, if she felt comfortable attending. "Are you sure you want me there?" she asked when I extended the invitation. "After everything, you're my daughter," I said simply. "That hasn't changed." The day arrived with perfect late November weather, crisp and clear, the Boston sky a brilliant blue. Jack arrived early to help with preparations, his mother bringing homemade pies despite my insistence that they didn't need to contribute anything. Amanda came last, standing nervously on the doorstep with a small bouquet of flowers. "Thank you for including me," she said as I welcomed her inside. The conversation flowed more easily than I had expected. Ellen and Amanda discovering shared interests in gardening, Jack entertaining everyone with stories from his business classes. Through it all, I watched my daughter serving others, listening attentively, laughing genuinely for what seemed like the first time in years. As we gathered around the table, I looked at these people who had become my unlikely found family. A year ago, I had been at the pinnacle of financial success, but nearly lost everything that truly mattered. Now, with far more wisdom and slightly less money, I had found something more valuable than any business deal could provide. "Before we eat," I said, raising my water glass, "I'd like to say something. This past year has taught me that true wealth isn't measured by bank accounts or business valuations. It's found in integrity, in second chances, and in the connections we build with others." I looked at Amanda, seeing Sarah's eyes looking back at me. "It's found in the courage to acknowledge our mistakes and work to make things right." My gaze moved to Jack and his family. "And in the willingness to help others, even when there's nothing to gain." Life rarely follows the path we expect. Sometimes it takes us through darkness to help us recognize the light. I'm grateful for each of you being part of my journey, and for the reminder that it's never too late to begin again. As we shared the meal together, I reflected on the strange, painful, yet ultimately redemptive path that had brought us to this moment. Money had revealed character, both the worst and the best, in those around me, but it hadn't defined it. That came from the choices we made in our darkest moments. Amanda caught my eye across the table and smiled tentatively. There was still healing to be done, trust to be rebuilt, but we had begun the journey back to each other, one honest conversation at a time. The greatest lesson from my near tragedy wasn't about betrayal, but about resilience, about recognizing that even our deepest wounds can become sources of wisdom if we choose growth over bitterness. That true security isn't found in financial assets, but in knowing our own capacity to begin again, to forgive, and to build something meaningful from the ashes of what we've lost. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to something positive in your life? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with others who might find meaning in it. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes our greatest challenges reveal our greatest strengths.